Welcome to VCM's Podcast BlogCon. My name is Hannah Bacani and I'm your host for this afternoon. And today, you guys, makakasama natin ang mga host ng podcast channels that we always see on Spotify charts here in the Philippines.
So hello to everyone who's tuned in right now. Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me here today. And of course, to our VCM fam for putting together this amazing event. To my Adulting with Joy Spring fam, Team Pring, and Team One Choice, everyone who's watching right now.
Hello,
hey,
Hannah. Hi, Joyce. Thanks for having us.
We have Soba over here. She's hiding. Agong shaved siya. So this is the first time we have her hair short.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're happy to be here with everyone, Joyce, Hannah, and everybody else watching. We're excited to get down and just keep talking.
So this first question is going out to Joy Spring. How do you feel na naging official part ka na ng Spotify Asia family?
Oh my goodness, right. I'm so happy, super excited talaga. And I even got to be a part of their Spotify Wrapped, the ending of 2020. So it was really amazing. It's been such an incredible journey. And sa lahat ng mga taong nagsasabi na they can't find out my episodes anymore, that's because it's specifically in Spotify lang, guys. So pwede nyo pa rin siya mapakinggan. We still release episodes every single week. And it's been so great.
I always talk about how you're such an inspiration in the podcast industry. Would you share with us some tips if someone is interested in having their own podcast?
It really depends. I think the most important and the cheesiest also that you have to remember when you want to start your own podcast is you have to actually love the medium, because I think some people would go into it because it's currently the trending thing. It's the thing that people talk about or listen to, but in reality it's not something that you can continuously create if you don't love it. If you don't love listening to podcasts, if you don't love creating podcasts and actually thinking about content or things to talk about, it's going to be difficult for you. You will be good in the first few weeks or so. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm trying to encourage you to be consistent in the craft. So I think it's really loving the medium that will change the whole game. Kasi I know, like when I started my own podcast, I didn't have the right microphone. I was just recording through like a small mic, even sometimes through my phone. You don't really need super fancy technical stuff, because if you really love it, you can create good content.
I have 2 tips
Okay,
for
go.
everyone. The first one is to just go for it. Like Joyce said, she started out not having the best equipment. And kami din naman, we just started with whatever we had on hand. And I think that's what gets the ball really rolling for anything that you do, is being consistent, just trying things out, because you will know what you need eventually, but you have to start somewhere. So just go for it. And the second tip would be, I guess it's like you're talking to a friend when you have a podcast. Of course, depending on the kind of podcast that you have. But for behind relationship goals, the peg that we really had was, dapat parang kausap mo lang yung kaibigan mo tungkol sa mga stories na pinagdadaanan mo. And that's kind of the beauty and I guess the whole charm of podcast is parang magkakatabi lang kayo when you listen to a podcast.
For me, I'm gonna go adjacent of what Joyce and Megan just said. I think the cool thing about this setup is we're all giving different perspectives to this one question. And one tip that I can give is that you don't necessarily need, for me, these are just all different perspectives. There are those who would love what they talk about or love the medium, but there are also those who get into something and the passion might not be burning right away. So I think learning how to love something, if you think you have potential, if you think you have a topic that you can discuss at length consistently, then podcasting is a medium that you can consider to be able to explore that. Because I think a good example, just to kind of like fast forward my answer, getting into GMA and acting was nowhere near a passion of mine, was nowhere near a love of mine. It was nowhere near an interest of mine, to be honest with you. But when I got into it, I did see that it was a potential place where I could develop something. So it was just a hunch, and I explored that hunch. And 10 years later, I'm here right now enjoying what I'm doing, definitely more interested than I was, more passionate than I was before. So I think Joyce, Megan, and myself just gave you guys 3 different perspectives on that same question. And I guess it just depends on where you lie on that segment. I mean, on that spectrum, like what affects and hits you the most. So yeah, and there are other answers and other perspectives to take that actually. So just sharing through right now.
Now, yung susunod na question natin, parang job interview siya. So, for both of you guys, how will you see yourself in the podcast world 5 years from now?
Oh my goodness.
Diba? Parang,
Paunahin po natin yung beauty queen, Megan.
I believe. To be honest, Mikael and I talked about this. And podcasting is really something that we want to do for whatever, forever, like forever how long that we can. And the reason why is because there's always a new story to tell. There's always a new experience to share with other people na baka makarelate sila, baka may makuha silang insight na hindi na makuha sa iba. And at the same time, we're also learning kasi from our viewers. Whenever they send in questions and even just feedback from the podcast, we're constantly learning from each other. And it's a nice cycle that we've had for the past 2 years. Why not continue doing it?
Yeah, to jump on what Megan said, 5 years from now, on a more technical note, we would like to be able to expand the reach of the stories that we're sharing. Podcasting is one way. We also come out on YouTube and on Facebook. And we feel that there are so many other types of media that we can surround the podcast with. So aside from maybe possibly a website, maybe ebooks, maybe merchandise, I mean, these are all things that we would like to explore to be able to grow the podcast, aka the brand as well. And these are things that just swirl around in our heads that we constantly try to keep planning for and trying to execute and go for. And hopefully 5 years from now, it's grown to be more than what it is now.
I concur with Team Dias. Yun na yung sagot ko. No, can I just share that when I started the podcast, it was primarily because I was working in TV. You know, I was working a lot in front of the camera, and I really missed radio. I really missed the anonymity of just having good, substantial conversations without necessarily having to present myself in front of the camera. And that's what I love about podcasting, because it's all about the conversations. As Megan said, it's like talking to someone that you're close with. It's like being in a circle of friends and actually discussing something that interests you, that invigorates you. And I think that's where I see podcasting going. You know, before the pandemic and the lockdown started, we were actually transitioning Adulting with Joy Spring to become this online talk show. That's why we had the full-length episodes online available on my website and also on YouTube. But now, because of everything that's changed and all of these other partnerships that I've had, I feel like, as Mick mentioned, you know, there are so many other ways to explore the podcast. And the beautiful thing about digital mediums is that it's so malleable and constantly changing. So you can always discover new ways to create content. So yeah, nobody really knows what's gonna happen in the next 5 years, right? Like, we never knew that we'd do a podcast BlogCon na ganito tayo from different places, not in one place, and just having this conversation. But I think it's just that it's constantly evolving, constantly reaching out new interests, and constantly creating. So yeah.
No, I have a question. Sorry, I wanted to ask a question. This is to Joyce and to the Bones. Okay, so I imagine that Adulting with Joyce and Behind Relationship Goals, I see this as a long-term play, like something you'd want to do decades from now. Okay, so I am curious that as the decades pass by, have you ever thought about the evolution of the name of the podcast? So obviously, Adulting with Joy Spring, would you like to stick to that even 2 decades from now? And Bonizi, Behind the Goals, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
So I'll let you take it away. But Joyce, you first.
Getting much older with Joy Spring. Ano ba naman?
Like, what's your general plan with
senior
that?
citizening with Joy Spring.
Oh, okay. Getting your 20% discount with Joy Spring. Something like, actually, not yet. I haven't thought about it yet because I feel like ang haba pa nung transition ko sa adulting. And ang dami pa eh. Like I think I have so many topics that I haven't even talked about on the podcast, and I haven't even transitioned to talking about marriage in the podcast because we were still talking about all the adulting, singlehood questions from the community on the podcast. So wala pang ganon. I haven't really thought about that, but I do feel like it's gonna change a lot, especially when we have kids. Obviously getting married, we have the plan of starting a family, and a lot of people are asking questions that's related to that already. I saw that when I got married, I started to have more questions about relationships. So sometimes ngayon, I would guest Juancho on the podcast to answer those questions, especially from a married person's point of view.
Bonizi, what's your answer?
Adulting.
In fairness, I just thought of this now because Mika was actually asking me this question. Nasa episode 3 pa lang kami ng Behind Relationship Goals. Tinatanong mo na, ano ang next name ng podcast natin? Sabi ko, wait lang, wala pa nga tayo isang season. Tinatanong mo na to. Okay, wait. So, ang naisip ko, Fofo, since we are behind relationship goals, one idea that I have is behind parenting goals.
Wow, I love that.
I don't know. It's something. It's something we thought of. I mean, outside of the regular content planning that Bonizi and I have, we also try to do a bit of long-term planning. I mean, just shots in the dark, really, just idea, just a brainstorming, really. So this was a question that came up early on, and then it came up again this year when we were planning for the rest of our year. So I just wanted to shoot it out to you, Joyce, as well, just to get where your headspace was with that question. And I guess we got some nice comments out of that.
Pero alam mo, Mick and Megan, I love that, yung behind family goals, because I feel like one of the things that we constantly see on the digital platform is like beautiful families. Tas sa Pinterest, merong ganun eh, parang family goals na photos, hanapin mo ganyan. And I think that a lot of people don't really, I mean, especially yung mga family na nagva-vlog or nagpo-post sa social media, hindi masyado na pag-uusapan like how hard really is it to raise up a family, especially for young couples like us. So, I like that. That's a nice thing.
Looking forward to the future.
Looking forward to the future. Yay!
Manifest.
Manifest! One last question, a word of advice for everybody out there who wants to start their podcast. Let's reiterate what we were talking about earlier.
I guess when it comes to podcasting, know what you want to talk about. Yun lang naman. Just put an idea out there. Make a short outline if that helps you out, because that's what helps me out when I do the podcast. And know what works for you, because everybody will have their own system of doing a podcast. It could be as easy as just knowing your topic right off the top of your head, and then you can just blab on about it for the rest of the day. But know what works for you, stick with it, and improve from there. And enjoy it. Honestly, like, just enjoy what you're doing. Kasi we enjoy doing the podcast. It's like we're talking to friends and family. And that's why we continue on doing it. Kasi nag-enjoy lang kami.
I concur.
Is that all?
I have to say, I said my piece on it.
Here.
Start. I said my piece on it at the start.
I think, yeah, Mick said it already. I mean, we talked about it kanina. There are different ways to look at podcasting, you know. It could be something that you're burning passionately for. That's why you started it. Or it could be something that just, you know, piques your interest and you're probably good at it. So you just try it out. But at the end of the day, we want to encourage you guys to listen to podcasts. One of the things that I love about podcasting is that you get to start and listen to amazing conversations. Sometimes there are conversations that educate you. Sometimes there are conversations that just entertain you. But most of the time, they're conversations that you didn't even know you needed in your life, but actually did. So podcasting is so special in that way. If anyone out there, if you're watching this right now and you want to start your own podcast, don't be afraid to just start. Like what Mick and Megan mentioned earlier, hindi mo kailangan ng fancy setup, hindi mo kailangan ng big community, because there is already a community that you can eventually be a part of once you start creating stuff. You just have to have the courage to do that first step. And we're here to welcome you. We'd love to hear more local podcasters in the future. So just go for it.
Yes, for Behind Relationship Goals, you can watch us every Sunday at 6 p.m. on YouTube and on Spotify.
And all the other podcasting.
And all the other podcasting platforms that are out there available.
Yeah. Thank you again to VCM for putting this together. We absolutely love you guys. Do check out VCM, the celebrity source, on all of your social media accounts. Please do follow me. You can go to my website, www.joyspring.com, if you want to purchase the Adulting Journal and also watch and listen and also read amazing articles on self-help, mental health, and even like just adulting stuff. If you want to read the blogs, it's there. And you can listen to my podcast, Adulting with Joy Spring, exclusively on Spotify. So there.
And that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, I'm your host, Hannah Bacani. Have a great rest of your day. Bye. Woo!
Bye guys! See you soon! Collab soon!
Everyone.